Okay, good morning everyone. By the time you watch this video, most likely it's gonna be Christmas, so Merry Christmas. And I thought, why not having a very nice walk in this cloudy Australian summer combined with Christmas Eve celebrations and discuss what it has been probably the most remarkable trend of 2025 in AI, and then what my personal predictions are for 2026. As a key insight that I got from 2025, I would say it's fair to say that this has been the year of reasoning model or test time compute models. So essentially those models that think first or they reason first before spinning out the actual answers. This has come at the beginning with some caveats, and I think these caveats still apply today. So obviously, in most cases, we've also seen with our customers that reasoning models are not ideal for customer service operations, simply because of the latency. So the amount of time it will then take for a user to actually receive an answer. And in many cases, reasoning models do not come with a very good trade-off in that sense, because customer service operations tend to be repetitive. So you would concentrate more on fine-tuning a model rather than allowing the model to reason to find out the answer through its own reasoning patterns. So that's definitely something that hasn't picked up a lot in customer service, I gotta say, but instead it has been extremely successful in what I call back office operations, which require a bit more reasoning because they are less predictable in nature. This has been true for both coding and RAG. Lately, throughout 2025, we have seen a significant ramp up of tool integration with API databases and lately with MCPs. Therefore, in this segment of use cases, we have seen predominantly the usage of reasoning models. So 2025, it has been a year of a lot of surprises, but in my mind, reasoning has been, from the very beginning, if you think about it, because we got the release of DeepSeek R1, if I'm not mistaken, it was early January 2025, and we've seen throughout more and more evolutions around the reasoning models. Just one thing that few people know, by the way, and I just wanted to share here. Reasoning models, it's true that they tend to be more accurate, but they're also much less creative. The reasoning model that we use in today's world allow you to fundamentally configure the reasoning effort, whichever that may be, and probably you've seen low, medium, high, highest, and also the top tier AI labs generally even make distinctions between the same model with different configurations in terms of reasoning effort. But essentially, whenever we apply this kind of technique to generate these reasoning traces, essentially what we try to do, we try to go out of the out of distribution traces in terms of what the data set is, to go back into what we call the in distribution, which essentially means that we try to steer the model towards examples that or principles of reasoning that it saw during its own training. This is obviously something that also us humans do. So we try to resolve a problem by referencing other problems that we've seen in the past. In a sense, it's kind of the principle of experience, right? So the model tries to do that too. However, because you always try to be inside the distribution of what the model is seen in its own pre-training phase, then you lose creativity when it comes to generating brand new content that doesn't really necessarily value so much reasoning capabilities. Rather, it values creativity. So that's actually an interesting thing that happens, unfortunately, with reasoning models. But in most cases, obviously, for back office, you don't really care about that. You care about, the accuracy of the output, and that's also why reasoning works really well with reinforcement learning and verifiable rewards, because in that case, creativity probably plays a very small role. In most cases, what we care about is accuracy. So that is something interesting, where reasoning models are not necessarily always great. So they are not good for latency sensitive use cases, so like customer service or line support. And also they are not fantastic at creativity. Now, coming to the 2026, so what are my predictions? So I think I've collected 3. Maybe during the video I'll then diverge and start hallucinating in other areas. But so the first one is, as 2025 was the year of reasoning, 2026 is the year of interleaved reasoning. So this is a concept that few people probably know, so you might find interesting. So when you look at agentic behaviors emerge from the combination of intelligent LLM content generation and what we call tool calling. Tool calling is a large branch of generative AI that can encompass MCPs, APIs, databases, or any sort of tool, again, I'll try to stay high level, that can help the agent perform a task. So the typical example that you see is an agent that can acquire knowledge about the current weather conditions. In that case, because the LLM doesn't have direct access to the internet, because it runs just on a GPU or a TPU or an LPU, you want to give the agent the ability to search the internet on the fly, find the information, and then inject the knowledge acquired by calling the internet search tool to generate the next answer. This is all well and good for simple use cases where you just want to call one of the available tools, or you can even call them in parallel, as a matter of fact. But fundamentally, you do single turn tool call, which allows the agent to give you the one-shot answer, maybe taking a bit more time because in the meantime it needs to do this search. But ultimately, you have a very strict multi-turn action between user and AI. Interleaved reasoning actually decouples completely the concept of turn between user and assistant or user and AI, because you would use the traces of reasoning as part of the next subsequent tool call that the agent can decide to perform autonomously to actually complete the initial task that was requested by the user. So this is something very similar that we do also at ToothFairy, by the way, which is agentic tooling, which essentially lets the agent decide when enough is enough to actually declare that the task requested by the user is complete. Because you might, for example, require to, let's say, update the contact details of a customer in a CRM. In that case, it's very unlikely that you will be able to perform this action one shot, simply because you don't even know who the customer is. You don't know what the current notes or the current metadata about the customer is. Therefore, your update most likely is not going to be accurate because you lack of context. So in the, let's say, 2025, early 2025 world, you would have had a bit of a problem because you cannot necessarily update the customer one shot without incurring massive risks of overriding data that currently exists on the CRM incorrectly. In the interleaved reasoning world, what you would be doing is that probably at first you would be making one GET request to pull data related to the customer. And then potentially you would be calling other GET requests to fetch additional sub information related to the customer that might be stored in other sections that will still be valuable for the agent to actually acquire the necessary context and knowledge about the customer to actually then execute the update, knowing the rest of the state of the customer in the CRM. This kind of multi-turn tool calling is what we call interleaved reasoning, because you would allow the agent to make these calls almost thinking to itself and allowing the agent to decide when it has enough information to then be able to actually complete possibly the initial tool call that you requested or the initial task that you requested via whichever interface you want, which was update the customer. However, the agent knows that to get there, it needs to execute a series of tool calls that are required to accomplish your final task. This is something that in the last quarter, we have seen more and more adopted by customers. Obviously, I like to always give a bit more of a technical insight in terms of how it works. But fundamentally, for customers, what this means is that we are officially moving away from the concept of agents as chatbots, which is very vindicating to me because it's something that I've been struggling to explain for the last 24 months. But now finally I can tell the market has picked up the difference. And to an extent, I think that I'm saying AI providers or AI platforms, we will have to come up with good ideas in terms of how we want the UI of this new user interface to look like. Because chat is not going to be, I don't think it's going to be as useful as it is today, because the level of interactivity that we will be dealing with at agent level will require much more an overview of the activity stream that has been getting executed by agents, meaning that an agent can run for 25-30 minutes to complete a task. And reasonably, it's reasonable to assume that most likely users do not want to see a stream of chats on their user interface, because obviously it wouldn't make any sense and it would be very bloated. So we need to come up with some good ideas to actually allow our users to orchestrate and manage and overview the work of agents in the background and intervene only when absolutely necessary. And I don't believe that the chat interface that we use today actually accomplishes what we need to do in the long term. So that's definitely the era of interleaved reasoning. And I'm very excited about it because we are working on several things already at ToothFairy about that. So you will hear from us very, very soon in that regard. The second one, I think, in terms of prediction that I have, is that 2026 is going to be the year of the B2B adoption. So this is something that we've seen already in Q4 2025, but I think it's going to stand true in 2026. So call it, it takes time for executives to understand what AI is about. Call it noise, hopefully will be settled down a bit in 2026 instead, in terms of what works, what doesn't work. Maybe this is wishful thinking, but from my personal point of view, I see a different way businesses come to us to adopt AI. Still very noisy, still confused, but convinced that it can deliver value. And the trick is going to be, in my opinion, a lot about do not sell businesses subscriptions, sell what I call units of intelligence. So essentially sell the ability for any business to integrate intelligence in their existing workflows, in their existing processes. Why this is important, I don't think any business wants the next subscription. I think that the big tech corporations have damaged the market enough in this regard, where everyone is extremely wary of the next subscription that is going to increase the OPEX to the moon and back, which is obviously not what we want. And I think that it will make a huge difference in terms of adoption, allowing businesses to inject only where necessary this new way of automating processes, without necessarily forcing businesses to completely transform the way they do operations, nor the way their platforms work, because we also need to remember that it's very nice for us in the tech community to think that everything should be more and more advanced, more and more technological. But the reality of the businesses that we work with, but we also hear competitors and we talk, obviously change is scary, change takes time. There are humans in the loop whether you like it or not, and there are internal politics that you need to deal with. And all this, whether we like it or not, again, slows you down. And you need to be able to embrace, to an extent, the human component of a business that is ultimately your client. And you need to make it as seamless and as less impactful as possible for businesses to adopt your product if you want to actually succeed. The idea of that I've seen from some startups of transform your business operations with our AI agents or human level work with our AI agents, that's complete horseshit. No one will actually believe you. To be quite honest, it's a very non-compelling statement to make, because then you are faced with the obvious challenge of, okay, prove to me that the level of work that these agents do is human level. Which I'm sure in certain aspects, I know we are already way past the human level, but pretending that you can completely remove the humans from the loop, or at least you can compete at human level in terms of understanding of context and understanding of how the business operates, that's a pretty significant challenge. The third and last is, in my opinion, also the most interesting, at least from my point of view, the era of specialized models. So it is very clear that I wouldn't say that we are reaching the moment of diminishing returns, because when you look at benchmarks, we keep on improving. So clearly there is more effort that needs to be put in to actually improve these models. However, it is also true that it's not unthinkable to keep on improving models, given the current paradigm of a bit of extra pre-training, a bit of post-training, a bit of fine-tuning through RL. We will keep on yielding some improvements. However, it's also true that what we thought was exponential seems more and more like a sigmoid function, okay? And we are already past the moment of change of trend where essentially we are, as a matter of fact, in the diminishing return section. However, there is also another trend that is emerging, which is that all these technologies that allow you to improve models after pre-training are not just available to the frontier labs to improve their models after pre-training, and I've discussed in the previous video what they did with DeepSeek 3.2 and DeepSeek 3.2 Speciale. But they're also available to businesses because the technology is exactly the same. So when we look at what we can improve in 2026, apart from agentic frameworks and better tool integration, which is all the stuff that stays around the model can be dramatically improved in terms of intelligence and context via leveraging RLs or reinforcement learning or DPO, and so direct preference optimization, and that can be used at scale by businesses to create their own frontier models. And because we are reaching an era where RL plays more of a factor than pre-training, it is also safe to assume that it wouldn't be a bad investment that once a year, a business, or once every 6 months, depending on how proactive you want to be, a business can create their own AI model, leveraging the pre-trained models that are available out there, and there are many, and then plug in this model, or this set of models if you want to then power their own AI agents that in the meantime can use interleaved reasoning for long-running tasks and can be more contextualized inside the operations of a business to actually become that famous unit of intelligence that I was talking about before, that actually helps businesses in specific processes, in specific workflows, whether it's for humans that need to accomplish actual tasks, or is for current platforms, which could be your CMS, CRM, ERP, to deliver better value to customers internally or externally. And I think that this is very exciting because it also marks a moment of democratization of the access of this technology, which, to be fair, has already happened in 2025, I think, mostly for platforms like ourselves, as obviously we made it very clear at ToothFairy, we use all the open source models. But I think that the next step is to bring businesses down this journey with us and letting businesses literally choose their own path in terms of what AI adoption means. And like I said before, I don't believe AI should be just a subscription. AI should be considered access to intelligence. Access to intelligence that works alongside humans and doesn't pretend to be a human level. We are simply two different types of intelligence. And I think 2026 will demonstrate that, where we're going to see, and this is my closing thought really, we're going to see that we will saturate the existing benchmarks in the AI space. 2026, I'm sure. Even Arc AGI 2 will be saturated. I'm sure we're going to reach 80-90% of that benchmark by the end of 2026 for sure. But like many say, when you start just leveraging a benchmark to understand whether you're progressing or not, you're already missing the point of the benchmark, because you're obviously concentrating your efforts in maximizing the reward over a benchmark. But humans don't behave like a benchmark. Think about the concept of initiative, motivation, hard work. That counts in many cases much more than raw intelligence. And I believe that we're going to see almost like a divergence in terms of what we expect from, or what we consider intelligence. So there is going to be the human kind of intelligence that will highlight creativity, responsiveness, initiative, passion. While on the other hand, you're going to have an artificial intelligence that will allow you to resolve hard problems that can, in my opinion, really sit well with a human on the side that needs to actually keep track of the long-term goal, long-term strategy. What kind of impact do you want to make in the society, and things like that. So with that, I'm really excited to be honest of 2026. Obviously, we want to see AI grow along with our business. But until then, Merry Christmas again, Happy New Year.